Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Kelly Barber, who is the vocalist and founding member of the band Wavebreak out of New Jersey. We talk all about Kelly's start in music, what her background is as far as influences, everything from Avril Lavigne to Kelly Clarkson to Silverstein and then to some heavy music. We talk about the start of Wavebreak, how it started for her after a few different iterations of attempting to do projects and how that all panned out for her and the different iterations of the band as well since 2017 to now. And we did this episode primarily to break down their brand new single, Spitting Out, which is out today from when this is being released. Absolutely fantastic song. I think it's by far their best material, and I can't wait to see what comes from this band next. If you have never checked this band out before, now is a great time because I think this song encapsulates a lot of what makes Wavebreak unique and shows all their strengths while adding in some new elements they haven't really fully dove into before. So it's definitely worth checking out and then going and checking out their back catalog. They've got a couple of EPs out, some singles and things of that nature over the span of the last 8 years of them being a band. So definitely worth checking out their entire discography, but start with Spitting Out, which we again break down in pretty good detail today. So thank you to Kelly for coming on. We did have a little bit of connection issues or internet issues during this, but I think I edited it together pretty well, all things considered. So I hope you all still very much enjoy it. It's a great conversation and great background on Kelly and Wavebreak's kind of influences and everything in between. So make sure to go check out Wavebreak on all social media. It is Wavebreak Band on Instagram, TikTok. I think they have Twitter as well. The only one that's different is on Facebook. It's Wavebreak Official. We break that down at the end. And of course, that'll all be linked in the show notes below. They do have their website as well. That is wavebreakband.com. Thanks to Kelly for coming on. I hope you really enjoy the episode. Before we get into that, make sure to follow the podcast on all social media at The Powerless Pod. Email me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com if you have constructive criticism. If you want to be on the show, whether you're a band, solo artist, producer, journalist, activist, political commentator, I talk to all of them. So make sure to hit me up there if you hear this and you like what you hear and you want to be on the show. That would be absolutely fantastic. We've got some great ones lined up in all political and music avenues going forward. So definitely check those out as well and follow so you can see when those new episodes drop. You can see all new episodes at thepowerlesspod.com. You can also find the merch there. You can find the Discord. You can find the Patreon, everything in between. So make sure to check all that out. If you want to, again, find the back catalog of 109 episodes prior to this one, or if you want to, again, get some merch or support the show, that would be really appreciated, especially if you're a return listener. I just appreciate everybody coming on and both doing the show with me over the last 2.5 years or so or more, and 110 episodes now. And again, last thing I want to go over, as always, before we get into the podcast, and the last thing I want to get into before we get into the episode is, of course, how you can support Palestinians in Gaza as they face forced starvation, famine, brutal violence that continues to escalate as Israel does its full campaign of genocide and ethnic cleansing. I do want to just share some vetted resources for people so that way they can make sure to donate and support Palestinians. I have done this personally myself, both directly to Palestinians in Gaza as well as to these organizations, and I can tell you it makes a world of difference for them. So it's definitely worth doing if you have a conscience and you know that what's going on in Gaza as well as the West Bank is wrong. Here are some vetted organizations that you can find through this website, The Cut, on how to help Gaza aid during the starvation crisis. So we've got Reviving Gaza, which distributes filtered water, hot meals, and dry food parcels to victims of the war. Ammo for Palestine, which provides financial help, supplies, water, and meals to people in North Gaza. It's Premier Project, which provides water, tents, and medications to people on the ground. Gaza Soup Kitchen, which provides meals to displaced families, sourcing ingredients from remaining farms in North Gaza. Dignity for Palestine, which supports displaced Gazans with food parcels, clean water, and medications. Oxfam, which works with local partners to provide a wide range of humanitarian aid and is fundraising and scale up its response wherever it's allowed. World Central Kitchen, which has resumed its hot meal service in Deir el-Balah Fuel Kitchen. UNICEF USA, which is on the ground providing services including clean water, malnutrition treatment, and cash aid to children and their families. And Save the Children, which is partnering with local groups to provide nutritional support, essential medical services, and basic supplies. So these are just a few organizations that are vetted that you can donate to help Palestinians in Gaza. And I know that sometimes it can be difficult to find vetted organizations, but this is a very well vetted resource. So make sure if you have a little bit of money in your wallet, or if you have a little bit of time, to check these out and try to see how you can support Palestinians in Gaza as they continue to face the most brutal violence we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And with that, we're going to dive into the episode with Kelly Barber of Wavebreak on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much.
I'm trying to throw myself a lifeline. I just can't find the sky. I don't know which way's up or down. I'm so damn lost inside. He said that I'd just begun, and that I should just rerun and force a smile and stay up high, but it's easier said than done.
All right, I'm here with Kelly Barber, who is the vocalist of the alternative rock emo band Wavebreak out of New Jersey, right? First and foremost, other than us having a little bit of fun here at the very, very beginning, how are you? How are you doing?
Doing well. Still not sure what was going on with my internet, but doing well. Basically just was working earlier in the day, and now I'm talking with you. So, what about you?
Yeah, going well. Happy to have you on. We've been talking about doing this off and on. I feel like for over, probably before your last EP release, even was probably like the last time we even chatted about doing this. So I'm really happy to have you on and talk all about your upcoming single. It's out this Friday, Spinning Out, as well as the band and your, process with music and everything in between as well, with everything in between. So yeah, first and foremost, I got to say this new single, I really like all of your guys' material. I've, checked everything out all the way back to, I think the first release, at least it's on Spotify, is from 2017, first single. But this song is probably, I say this a lot of times when I have people on for their newest releases, but that's a good thing. It's probably my favorite song you've put together. I like the heaviness of it, as well as it's still sticking to a lot of the kind of alternative emo elements that you guys have in all of your other releases. So yeah, really, really stoked to talk about this one, break it down a little bit. Before we get going though, I always like to do a little bit of an icebreaker when, I've talked to you online a little bit here and there, but I've never chatted with you. I know we're through a screen here, but it's almost like meeting somebody in person. What have you been listening to a lot lately? What's kind of your Spotify on repeat or, equivalent of? What are some bands or artists or releases you've been listening to?
So I've been listening to a lot of Rivals, a lot of Silverstein, Acceptance, because they just put out a re-record of like one of my favorite albums ever. Has some of my favorite singers as guest vocalists on there, which is really cool. The Home Team, Spirit Box, and there's a few bands like Cartographer, Senses, Pretty Pity I found recently. They're really good. Greywind, who's putting out an album. I think their album got pushed back. It's now coming out the beginning of next year. But yeah, those have been the main ones recently.
That a couple of those I got to check out. That's why I like to do that more than anything, is to give myself homework for music to check out. But both the Silverstein record, I thought the newest one that they put out, it's the second one this year. You could almost say it's like really of like a 16 track album for the year between the two of them or whatever it is. But I like the second one a lot better. Pink Moon. I think it's I heard, I'm biased because Shane's part of the reason why I ended up doing the show a little bit. He helped me get it going, kind of helped me like get the bells and whistles on how to do it. So I'm a little biased because I know that like this album has a lot more of his songs on it, but it just felt darker. It felt more like kind of some of their more like somber elements of like their older records. And so I think it's like, I was surprised. I liked Anti-Bloom. It was good. But this one I thought was like absolutely awesome, and like, a 2025 version of some of their best classic songs.
I got the same vibe. Like I thought like Pink Moon was definitely like is more dynamic because it had more of like the more somber stuff like you mentioned, but it also had the heavier stuff like that feature with Dayseeker and stuff. Whereas the one before it definitely leaned more on the heavy side of things, I thought.
Yeah, they've kind of been doing, they've gone through so many different iterations of sound for them, that I feel like it's whatever they put out is just kind of like what Silverstein is. But yeah, this new one I'm stoked on. I have to go back and listen through it a few more times, but it's great. And Spirit Box and all, you named off a few things that are probably going to be in my top 10 albums already of the year for sure. But to kind of go from there a little bit before we get into talking about Spinning Out and kind of like the newer iteration of the band for you guys, can you just kind of go back for me? I'm always interested when I have people on for the first time, especially when it's a one-on-one kind of conversation. What first got you really into being passionate about music? Like we've named off Silverstein, some other classic post-hardcore bands, could be that kind of thing. What was kind of like your first foray into finding your own music and it not just being kind of like what was on the radio with your parents, or, kind of like that first step of like music's not just like I'm not just a passive listener. I'm like into this sort of passionately, even just as a listener.
So before I ever really got into making music, I was also like, when I was like 9 years old, before that even. Like I liked like just writing. Like I used to write like really short stories and like poems and stuff. But then once it was actually Avril Lavigne that got me into wanting to do music. So when I was like 9 years old, I think once I first found out about Avril, I went over to a friend's house and then she let go on. And then I was like, oh my God, like did something to my brain and made me want to get the album myself and get a copy of it. And then like just listen to it nonstop. Like I would have that album like on my little boombox in my room and like listen to it like front to back, reading the lyrics and everything. And it was like Avril Lavigne, and it was also like Kelly Clarkson, like pop rock artists in the 2000s. So that's kind of where I started. And then I kind of started getting into like actual like bands like in middle school, like Fall Out Boy, Panic in the Disco, Paramore, and then started getting more into it throughout high school in terms of like actual bands. But yeah, like over time, like my taste has gone from like the lighter pop rock stuff and gone into like some of the heavier stuff like Silverstein and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty solid trajectory. That reminds me, you bring up Avril. I've just again, I've not to talk about Silverstein over and over, but like, I think it was like she went on a tour in Japan, like an arena tour, and she brought Silverstein as the opener. I like always remember that as like one of the weirdest things of like going like overseas for a tour, and like they were like screaming their heads off right before Avril Lavigne and like her like her like kind of like biggest point of her career, and she brought on a couple of guys that are just like yelling their heads off and like screaming and doing breakdowns with it. I think that's just kind of cool because I think I probably got really into music like this around the same age as you, and people kind of like, it was mostly men, but like wrote off Avril Lavigne as sort of like a mall emo, mall punk type
Yep.
deal. But it's like, regardless of that, she was totally bringing out like legit, like legit emo post-hardcore bands. Like she at least knew, or her team or whoever at least was like legitimately tapped into like the real alternative space.
Yeah, like I don't think she gets enough credit, honestly, for like her artistry and being in the alt scene, because like especially her earlier stuff, like if you watch like live performances of her music, like her first two albums, like it's very like rock oriented. Like she's not like just like a
Right.
pop artist. And I think a lot of people who don't really know much about her material, they kind of just write her off as some pop artist, but her material is actually really has a lot of variety to it, and it kind of spans the whole it kind of spans between everything between pop and like the more rock stuff. So
Yeah, definitely one of those people that in that period of time was just the gatekeeping of music is not what it is now, right? To where like now I think somebody like that can be more legitimately appreciated for sure. um to kind of go from that, you said that you were kind of writing like poetry and kind of like that sort of like lyrical aspect of things at a pretty young age. Was that kind of like, when did you kind of go from being an avid listener to this kind of alternative music to like taking that kind of poetry writing, maybe you don't show anybody but yourself type deal, or maybe a few people, and then you kind of go into writing your own music? Was that kind of just like a pretty easy segue for you from all that kind of stuff, or when did that kind of start happening where you were like, I'm not just listen to music and be like passionate about these artists, but I'm actually going to start creating my own music? Like was that like just shortly after that? How did that kind of come into play for you?
so like there were a few instances where I like tried to start writing lyrics like in early middle school, but I don't think like I started like actually writing like complete songs and stuff, I think in like 8th grade, maybe 7th grade. So that's when I like first started like actually like starting to take it seriously with turning the poetry I was writing into actual like lyrical poetry into full songs.
Yeah, I mean that seems like right up the alley of an emo kid, right? For lack of a
Yeah.
better term, right? Were you in like bands in high school prior to Wave Break? Like, were you doing stuff on your own? Like, what was kind of your first foray into kind of playing live or recording music, or kind of getting into that space of like creating your own material in that vein?
Yeah, so I kind of first started with doing solo stuff. So before I ever like got into a band, I was like doing like just solo pop rock stuff, which I started in like high school. And like I would perform the songs like fully acoustic. It would just be me and an acoustic guitar. So I didn't have like a backing band, but all my recordings were like full band. But they were more like pop rock oriented, kind of like the stuff that I first started listening to. I started trying to get a band together in college, and then there were a couple attempts there, and neither of them really panned out to anything. Um, for because like freshman year, we started. I had a few people lined up for a band, but it fizzled out because like we couldn't find a place to practice because all of us were in dorms. Like we didn't have like a room or anything where we could practice. So it kind of just fizzled out. And then I think junior year, there was some kind of like battle the bands thing that I tried to get like a band together for just that one show. And it didn't really pan out because the people I had for that actually did not learn the songs in time for it. So I ended up having to drop off of it like the day before or something, or the day of. So that didn't pan out either. So it wasn't until like after college ended, like a year after college ended where Wave Break started. And actually I just remembered there was another instance right after college ended where I tried to join a band that was like more like emo like oriented, and I would practice with them for like 2 months, wrote like a full EP's worth of lyrics, and then they basically like kicked me out in the most shady way possible. um and then Wave Break started.
Jesus Christ.
So it's been a bit of an ordeal trying to get a band started. So I'm glad it finally ended up panning out, and it's been going for as long as it has finally.
Yeah. I mean, that just shows new music, like resilience is key, right? Because like I'm sure plenty of people have attempted things the way you did, and when the first 2 iterations don't work out well, you're like, well, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like it can be very demoralizing. I'm sure like you could attest to that.
Yep.
I've attested to, like, there's been so many times I would like in college or high school or whatever, you try to people either like you said, didn't practice, didn't learn things, or preferred dicking around to like actually you can have fun, but you still gotta like learn and practice what you're doing and take it a little seriously. So yeah, resilience there is the lesson. But have to go, but like you said it was a little shady. Do you mind like how shady and how terrible was that experience? Because we've all had. I got kicked out of a band for being like I was going to be the vocalist for this band, and I got kicked out because like I worked. So like it was just like one of those things. Like people were so ridiculous. So do you have a good story there, or is it just sort of like depressing and anger filling?
So I actually wrote the song Flight Syndrome on the first Wave Break EP about this, but basically what happened was like we were meeting up like every week. Went on for like 2 months. I wrote lyrics for like a whole EP's worth of songs. Eventually they had just texted the group chat out of the blue saying like they were just like the band is done because like their finances can't make it work, or they didn't have the time or whatever. The band's just done. So they were like, you'll need to come to the practice space, pick up your stuff, pick up your amp or whatever. So I was like, all right, well, I guess that's kind of a bummer, but I guess I'll go and get my shit. So I went to go get all my stuff. And then later on, like I think like later that year, Wave Break, I had the first lineup together. We were starting to record some stuff. The producer we were working with actually knew the people that I was in that band for like 2 months, and he saw that they had posted on their Instagram that they were recording music and with a new singer, and the singer was a dude. So between that and the fact that like when I was practicing with them, they had said a couple questionable things about women in general in music, I have a suspicion that they kicked me out because they didn't like having a girl in the band and they wanted it to just be their boys club. But that's what it seemed like to me. So
Well, it all kind of works out because then those people missed out, and you don't want to be in a band with those kind of people anyway,
exactly.
right? Like, so it's all a blessing in disguise in some ways, because you end up clearly within the next year starting Wave Break, which like you said, you've had 3 EPs, numerous singles. I think again the farthest back I could find a song release was Deadlock in 2017. I don't know if you had other songs that you put out for Bandcamp you try not to have on Spotify, but like, so the band's been going on for 8 years strong. I'm like you've said, probably some different lineup changes and things of that nature, but that's kind of cool that in a way your first like full tilt band is still the one you're in after after so many like so many different years. Like, not too many people can say that, right? Like, I wish I could say that. I think I'd have to count on like two hands the amount of like projects I did like one EP with, and then it just like flubbed and died, So I guess like when it comes to Wave Break, you start this project. You've been obviously doing singer-songwriter stuff in the past. What like is that kind of how the songwriting process started for the band? Were you still like the primary like head of like sort of getting the skeletons of the songs going?
All of those songs, and Out of Breath, which was kind of like a standalone single, but all of those songs started with me writing the rhythm guitar, the vocals and melodies first, and then adding on all the instruments afterwards. And then with Armory, I had my lineup for that EP, and I would write the skeleton of the song and then bring it to practice. We would jam on it. Everyone will come up with their own parts. For puzzle pieces, it was a little different because I didn't have a band at that point. So I was technically a solo EP. So basically I took those song skeletons and worked on them with my producer, who helped fill in the gaps with all of like the lead guitar, the bass, the drums. I had written a few riffs on my own, but he basically helped fill in the rest of the gaps there. And then Ignite Decay, things shifted quite a bit because that was the first batch of music that Tom, our new bassist, was on. And we also had our drummer at the time, Kyle, who we basically would work on everything together. There were a couple songs, Spark and Wither Away, that started with some demos that Tom had put together. And then the other three kind of started, I had written like a skeleton of a chorus for those three, and then like either brought them to practice or I brought them to work on with Tom to demo out some ideas for the rest of the song. But we would then come up with instrumentals for the rest of the song, and then I would go back and put lyrics for the rest of the song there. So that kind of shifted. And then for Easier Said and Now Spinning Out, those both started with demos that our new guitarist Will had put together. And then I took those demos and wrote the lyrics and the melodies to those. And then everyone put their parts on top of that as well.
So a lot of different sort of iterations of what was put together that, it's interesting that you went from having a fuller band that kind of fleshed things out with you with Armory to then going back and doing a mostly solo EP. Was that just kind of, again, I'm not trying to like stir the pot here with what I ask about the band, but it seems like there's been a lot of different iterations. Was that sort of just like what kind of happened? Like it just kind of boiled down to that things didn't work out with the first iteration of the band, you ended up doing it on your own, or just kind of like what was the process there? Because that's got to be like a weird shift. A lot of people end up, I think, doing a lot of solo stuff, and then you eventually get a band behind you and it becomes more collaborative, which seems like it is now, right, with the newest stuff. But it's weird. It's interesting to go like from collaborative to back to mostly solo to then collaborative again. That's like sort of a roller coaster.
Yeah, it was definitely a little weird, but it wasn't too much of a transition considering even on Armory, those songs started with song skeletons I had written. So it was basically, instead of working with a full band on the songs, like filling in the gaps, I was working with one person who was helping fill in the gaps. So it wasn't too much of a change, but it was a little bit weird going back to being solo, because I do prefer being in a band because I think it's more fun having people to work on everything with. But yeah, it was more of me like just trying to keep things going, because like that lineup didn't pan out. Actually, that era was a couple different lineups actually, but neither of them really came out. But that was Puzzle Pieces with me trying to basically just keep Wave Break as an entity going, just kind of keep the ball rolling. And eventually then we came out on the other side and then put out the Ignite Decay stuff after that.
Yeah, and I kind of want to ask a little bit, like, what are some of the elements, because I think all of the releases you've done have been really solid. They still sound like the same project because it's you singing and you've got your influences that are like mixed in with every different iteration you've done on these different releases. What are some things with the most recent releases, and then we'll finally get into Spinning Out, What are some things that you've noticed have been brought in by the other band members that have kind of created a little bit of a different sound, or that you've enjoyed kind of as that collaborative aspect, as you're talking about, that you prefer over having to do things totally,
I've definitely
totally
noticed that
solo for the most part?
particularly, like, for example, with Tom, I like how some of the stuff that he's brought, like, it's very bass focused. Like, you can tell with the way that Wither Away was written, like, it was written, like, primarily on bass at first because of that bass line. So, like, I like how, like, with the way these
Mhm.
songs are written and how they start with, like, another instrument, and with all the influences they're bringing in and everything, like, it sounds like that instrument is the focus of the song. And also, like, with Will, with some of the stuff he's bringing, like, the stuff that he's bringing in is, like, riffy as shit. Like, I love that, like, that's such, like, a focus, and you can tell that, like, it started with those riffs because it's such a focus of the song. So, I do think that because of that, the songs have shifted to you can the earlier songs, you can tell they kinda started with, like, the rhythm guitar and the vocals, but the newer stuff, like, it's just the instrumentals are a lot more involved, and you can tell that the instrumentals was more of a focus than just the vocals.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, since you've done so many different things with this, and you've talked about that, the last two songs, both Easier Said and Out, Spitting Out, are more correlated with kind of you taking someone else's things that they've written and writing lyrics on the top of it. Do you find that more difficult? Do you find that easier? I just asked because I was someone that was like so set. I don't mean to keep talking about, but I'm gonna say this quick. I was somebody that, like, for so long in projects, I was like, I had to write the music if I was singing over it, or it felt weird. Like, it felt like you were doing karaoke over somebody else's stuff. But when I started doing it with somebody else, it actually ended up feeling like it brought out a different side of, like, your writing that, like, you didn't even know could be enjoyable. It was kind of like a different way of looking at things. So with that in mind, like, do you find that it's more difficult, or do you find that you enjoy it more?
I would say for me, it is a bit more difficult because when I do have something I'm trying to write to, I'm trying to figure out, like, the right vibe to fit that song versus where if I start writing something on my own first, then I can just write whatever comes out, but trying to write something that fits a demo that someone already put together is a little bit more difficult because then I have to get myself in the right headspace to write to that specific demo. Because, like, for example, for Spark, I rewrote that chorus probably like 5 times because I was struggling with that song hard with, like, how just it being in a major key and it feeling a lot more upbeat and almost happy compared to a lot of the stuff that we had put out, and, like, a lot of the stuff that I usually write is either, like, sad or angry, so it was definitely a challenge for me to write something that I liked that, but I do like how it forces me to write stuff that I wouldn't ordinarily write. It does, like you said, it forces me to write stuff that showcases a different side to what I can do. So it's more difficult, but it also forces us in general to, I think, come out with, like, more interesting stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily get.
Yeah, yeah, it could be like, but there's good and bad elements to it, right? It's a little more stressful, but it can bring out something different, right? Which is what collaboration is sometimes, right? Like, it can make things a little bit more arduous, but can ultimately have a more unique product, right? So that kind of gets us into Spinning Out, which, again, like I said earlier, I think it's so hard with when a new song's coming out, you're hyped up for it. So I don't want to say, like, I'm saying this, like, but pretty unequivocally, I think this song has a lot of things in it that makes it your best song. I think the kind of heavier elements that are brought into this, not that you guys haven't done that to differing degrees in some ways with the instrumentation and stuff like that before, but, like, you know, it goes pretty dark and pretty heavy, and clearly, the diving into the lyrics a little bit, it's a dark and aggressive song, right? In a lot of senses. So kind of break down for me Spinning Out, like, where the song came from, what the inspiration was, both instrumentally and lyrically.
Yeah, so the song came from originally Tom had actually written a riff, and then Will took it and, like, expanded on it, changed it a bit, and turned it into a whole demo, and then, like I said, I took that demo and then I wrote the lyrics and the melodies to it. Basically, I tried to figure out, like, what the song felt like it was trying to to say or what the vibe was, and I ended up settling on the concept of spinning out because it kind of like the song kind of feels like you're spinning out. Like it kind of like feels like I don't know, it kinda just feels like there's a lot going on and, like, constant movement and stuff, so, basically, I decided to write the song about, like, my experiences with feeling like I'm spiraling because of anxiety, which is something that I have struggled quite a bit with over the last couple years or so. Basically, like, with between work and the band and your personal life and random stuff like your AC breaking down, which just happened like a couple weeks ago for me. Like all that stuff like compounds together and basically just makes you or makes me really stressed out. And sometimes when things like build up and I get like really stressed out, I literally feel like I'm spiraling and I can't figure out what to focus on and I end up just not addressing anything and the song also kinds of touches on self-destructive behaviors like self-isolation and kind of destroying all your relationships because of that. And that's a reference to basically when start feeling like I'm spiraling out, I kind of start to shut down and I start like ignoring messages and stuff. And sometimes I just don't respond for a while and then it just makes things worse and worse and worse. And then I just so it's basically just a reference that song is basically a reference to that and feeling like I'm stuck in that cycle and not really knowing how to get out of it. So that's basically in a nutshell what it was about.
Yeah, I mean, you can get that pretty clearly from listening through it in like a one go, right? Like it's at the forefront in a good way. Like I think I personally prefer when I can get the gist of like what a song's about in an instant listen. Sometimes people are into ambiguous lyrics. I get that, but like I really personally enjoy a song more in this element. And yeah, one thing that was noted, and like you could tell us before you sent it over for me to listen to for us to do this, just from the clips you guys had put up of the chorus. The chorus is like by no means the most like flowing, easy part of the song. It's very chaotic in a lot of ways. Like you said, you and your bandmate just like going back and forth with like kind of like yelling, belting vocals, and you repeating your lines. It feels like you said, not to just steal your words, but it feels like a straight up spiral, you know? So I think you delivered that like incredibly well. You know, oftentimes even with people covering dark topics like this or very personal relatable topics for listeners, you still want to go for that soaring hook, right? Like you still kind of want to go for that element to it. But not that the chorus isn't catchy, it's catchy in a different way. But instead, yeah, it totally just feels like somebody like losing their mind in the middle of the chorus, which is like
Exactly. Yeah, and
right up
like
the alley of what you're talking about,
especially
right?
with like Josh joining the band because he joined a few months back officially, like around in May, I think. And he joined at just the right time because once we started writing the song, like we were like, oh, we have to get Josh to do screams on this song. And then we ended up having him do scream singing for that other part in the chorus. And it works out perfectly because like especially with the social media content, like that one video we posted where like it's like it keeps panning between me and Josh. Like we could literally like have like the camera like spinning out like between us two. Like I thought that was so cool. So like there's a lot of content that we did that were like we have like the camera like spinning around in like different directions and stuff. So we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, no kidding. Like it's definitely like yeah, it just really speaks to how much the song is sticking to and pertaining to what you're talking about with the release. I guess like is this kind of like where you think the band going forward is going to go with this, more of like, again, not to say that you weren't doing things like this before, but like these heavier elements and these more like, I mean, the song straight up ends with like a metalcore like breakdown, you know, like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Do you find that that's a sound that obviously you're going to do what you've done in various dynamic ways, but is that something you enjoy doing more as time goes on? Do you kind of find that heavier element?
Yeah, honestly, I love the stuff that we're doing that goes in this more heavier direction. And there's definitely going to be more of that in the future. There's probably also going to be some more stuff that's more on the poppier end of things, like for example, Spark and Easier Said. So like I don't think we're gonna like pigeonhole us into doing one or the other, but we're definitely gonna have songs that are gonna lean more in that direction. More and more in that direction as time goes on too, because We have Josh who can do screams in the band, and now I'm learning to scream, so I'll be able to put some screams on some stuff too, and then we'll be able to probably have some stuff where we're both screaming together. So there's
Awesome.
a lot of opportunity there for us to do some heavier stuff, so I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, that's just kind of fun, even just in a live setting, to be able to just go nuts with it, right? Like, well, what kind of like brought you into wanting to do that? Was it just that like kind of getting into heavier music, feeling like it's something more angsty that you can throw into the music? Because, you've got, it's one thing to have like, I guess your secondary vocalist, for lack of a better term, throwing in some yells, but like to want to throw that in with, you do a lot on your songs. You definitely like go all over the place with several different octaves sometimes. You're definitely someone that's a dynamic singer as it is. Is it just because like you're kind of getting into that heavier element with your music, or I'm just curious because I think it's a fun thing to do
I just
live.
did it the other night at a show for the first time, and I was having a lot of fun throwing it in every chorus for Lost in Limbo. But yeah, like as time goes on, like my taste has been getting kind of heavier and heavier, and I think learning to scream or wanting to learn to scream has been a natural result of that. I think the first time I remember wanting to learn to scream, I think was when I found the band Dream State. Their old singer Jay, like she was
Mhm.
incredible. I think she was the one who made me want to start learning how to scream, but it took me a few years to actually start, or several years to actually start like trying to learn, because for the longest time I was terrified to just do it because I didn't want to ruin my voice or throw my voice out, and I didn't want to learn it the wrong way. And so I had it in my head that I had
Right.
to like hire like a voice teacher to teach me to do it, and I just never got around to doing it. And then fast forward to when Josh joins the band, he knows how to scream. And I was talking to him like, "Oh, you got to teach me how to scream." And he at one point was just said like, I mean, you already know how to sing, so, like, you're probably not gonna throw your voice out, so just do it. Like, just go ahead and try it. So then, at one point,
Yeah.
we met up, like, for Tom's birthday at, like, a barbecue, and we were talking about it, and then he just screamed, and then I just tried to imitate it, and I was like, "Holy shit, I just did it." And then fast forward to the show we just did, I randomly just decided a couple drinks in, I'm just gonna try to scream today. And then I did it. I'm like, holy shit, I guess now I can scream. So it was never as hard as I thought it was gonna be. I think I just thought it was gonna be a lot harder than it was because I had it in my head. I might just ruin my voice, but it's not really something to worry about apparently if you already know how to sing the right way. So
Yeah, that's definitely what people say. I think it's just more of a mental game. You know what I mean? It's one of those things of it's hard to just like let it rip, I guess, like for lack of a better term. And once you like figure it out, it's like, oh yeah, this is like way easier than singing. Like it absolutely is, as long as you're not just like blowing your throat out, like you said.
yep.
It's actually like a lot easier than trying to carry a pitch like over blowing out speakers at a whatever like punk DIY show you're playing at. Like that's way harder. Holding a note when your ears are getting blown out is way more difficult. Um no, but that's awesome. Again, the song is really great. Again, really relatable. It's cool to hear that you guys are kind of bringing in these heavier elements while still keeping the sound of the band. Um, Going forward, you've had these last couple of releases. You've had Easier Said and then Spinning Out. I know you haven't announced things, so of course you can just say like I can't say anything, fuck off. But is this leading up to you just kind of doing, you know, intermittently like single releases? Are you guys trying to look at going forward having some sort of EP or other project? I mean, you just put out an EP not that long ago, so I would totally get if not. But like, is this kind of like going forward? You guys trying to work on further music and a bigger release, or
So I think for like the foreseeable future, like the next year and change, I think we're gonna be focusing on just putting out a handful of singles, trying to get our names out there more, trying to get our streaming numbers up, stuff like that. Pushing our social media more, trying to get all of our numbers up for a while. Before we do anything like an EP or an album. I would love to do like a full length or something after that at some point. But there's no like real plans for that yet. So right now the focus is to try and get some singles out and push those and just try to get all of our numbers up before we do more. And then at some point after we do like a small handful more, then there'll probably be like an EP or borderline album or something after that. So
Yeah, no, that's cool. And again, singles, I think, I'm the same way. I love albums, or when people put out an EP that's like 7 songs, like that's an album. But like multi-releases, because I feel like you end up
Mhm.
expanding what you're doing a little more, taking a little more risk with some different songs. But that's just not the world we
Yeah.
live in of like what people check out anymore either. So singles are definitely the way to go. I'm curious because you've done I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place here, but since you've been doing this project off and on for the last 8 years, obviously promoting music has changed quite a bit. You alluded to a little bit of trying to get your numbers up, doing some of the different clips you've done for Spinning Out leading up to the release this Friday. Do you enjoy that side of things? Like, do you enjoy the sort of like, social media push clips you have to do for this song, that kind of elements of it? Do you find positive elements of that, or do you feel like, as I get different answers every single time I ask this question, or do you feel like it's just like an inevitability of something you and your bandmates have to do to push the algorithm for people to finally check out a band and check out your music in the world of like saturation of being endlessly
So I
exposed
kind of have
to?
a love-hate relationship with the marketing side of things and the doing like reels and TikToks and stuff. I would rather be spending my time working on new music. But I don't completely hate the
Yeah.
marketing side of things. Like I do like it on some level because I do marketing for my day job. I work in digital marketing. I do like Facebook ads, Google ads, stuff like that. So I literally work in social media. Like I like it on some level.
Yeah.
It's just it's a lot. Like, the amount that you have to keep pushing and pumping out content to get the numbers up and how just working with the algorithms because the algorithms are always like there's always weird things going on with them and, like, suppressing your content and stuff like that and trying to figure out how to get people to see your content, like, why aren't people, like, engaging, this, that, and the other thing. So, I do enjoy, like, making the content and posting it, and I particularly enjoy it when things are going well and people are engaging, but it can become frustrating when it's not going well and trying to figure out why it's not going well. But yeah, there's
And
just
sometimes
no
there's
answer.
no answer
Sometimes
to
it
that
just didn't
either,
work and
right?
you just
Yeah.
post the next thing and hopefully that works. But yeah, like I have a love-hate relationship with it. Like it can be fun, but it also can be very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially like because I get told the same thing all the time with this show too. Like I've talked to people that like do more successful whether it's political ones or music ones. They're like, just gotta post more clips, post more. It's like, yeah, but like you edit together 10 things and then those don't go well, and then you do something you don't even care about, and then that's the thing that gets like 1,000 hits or 1,000 likes and like tens of thousands of views, and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm supposed to do here. So like I totally, whether it's a podcast or music, it's all like that kind of content machine where you're like, I don't know. Like you said, it's a great little like dopamine hit when it
Yeah,
does well, but
exactly.
every other time you're like, what
It's
the
like you
fuck
never
am
know
I
what you're gonna get
doing?
with it. So it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks for breaking this one down for me. I really think, for listeners that have not checked out Wave Break before, first of all, go listen to the whole discography. It's all fantastic. But Spinning Out, which will be out this Friday, September 26th, is a fantastic song, and I think like a good introductory as well for people if like they're getting into like the new side of the band. Like it feels like a big push of like, what you guys can do collectively. You've got pretty melodic, what I would say like pretty staple wave break sounding verses mixed in with like a more chaotic chorus with then
Yep.
like a pretty game changing ender and bridge. So you've got all these different elements in a variety of ways that people can definitely check out before checking out your other catalog. So again, Kelly, thanks. But go ahead and just plug for people where they can find the band, where they can find the single and support you guys. What you have and what you've got
Yeah,
going on
so
for
you
the
can
rest of the year
find us
for
on
2025.
all of our social media, every app at Wave Break Band. The only one that isn't at Wave Break Band is Facebook. It's at Wave Break Official, and then you could go to Wave Break Band and find our links to literally everything. And yeah, in terms of what we've got coming up, we've got Spinning Out coming out on Friday, and we're opening for Emblem 3 and the Foxies at House Independence in Asbury Park on November 12th. So if anyone who is listening wants to go and wants to get tickets, please buy them directly through us because it helps us a lot. You can find a link to our ticket link on our website or through our Instagram. And then after that, we've also got another show that we just confirmed for November that we haven't announced yet. And we're also working on potentially another show in December that we have not announced or really fully planned yet. So, but stay tuned for that. And then, yeah, hopefully there'll be more stuff next year. Maybe we'll tour next year. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and there's going to be, I heard somewhere through social, there's supposed to be some rumblings of, you doing something with Sierra from With Sales Ahead. Somebody proposed that should happen at some point, but I don't know who said that. But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, all that's great. And of course, all those links will be below in the notes for people on the kind of edited side of things, both on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen, to check out what Wave Break's doing going forward. Usually I have people pick a song to play at the end, but I don't think we have a whole lot of choice on this one. It obviously has to be Spinning Out, as that'll be out the same day. I think I'm going to release this Friday, if not the following Monday. And so we're this is a rare one where I'm obviously going to pick that we're going to do Spinning Out, playing from Wave Break at the end of the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Yeah. Appreciate it.